Hi everyone, I'm Dipin with CE Critic, and this is the first episode of the Tech Collective. And I'm here with my co-host, who's been a journalist for the last 30 years in the tech industry, Scott Thaler. Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really excited. You can see I'm wearing my very headphony thing there.
Oh yeah,
Could
look
my
at
shirt
that.
could my
Where did you
shirt be
get
more
that from?
headphony? I got that actually at a show called CanJam 2 years ago. Um,
Oh wow,
so yeah, I thought that would be appropriate given what we're talking about today.
that's a fun shirt. I have so many industry shirts. I should start wearing some of those. I didn't even think about that till I saw your shirt. That's for future
I wasn't
episodes.
planning this until this morning. I'm like, oh, if I was ever going to wear a headphone shirt, I guess now would be the time.
No, I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us on the first episode here. We're really excited to be here. We've got a lot to cover. What we talked about in our last opening episode, we're going to jump into news first. We've got a lot of topics there. Then we'll do our deep dive, which this week is actually Scott was at CanJam New York this past weekend. So we've got a lot to talk about over there. And I think we have a really good show for you for our first show today.
If we
So
don't say
Scott,
so ourselves.
yes. So Scott, you want to jump us off with some of these news talking points that we have? We have a whole list of them that you'll find in the description below. But
Yeah.
of the list of things that we have here, Scott, like what particularly sticks out to you?
Well, I mean, the first one that jumps out is the Meze Audio Astro, just because again, it's about headphones, and I actually tested them out at the show. Um, they just launched Meze. In case people aren't familiar, is known for. It's funny, I have them like just out of reach. They're known for over-ear headphones that are very distinctively designed, and they're just fun, well-made headphones. And so it was news because they are about to release these new in-ear monitors or earphones, and they're titanium. Sorry, I had to do that. They're titanium, and
Okay.
they have this metallic look, and they really sounded very interesting. The sound is very what I would call revealing. It sounds like it reveals a lot of details and very clean and detailed. So that jumped out at me. But I know there's a lot of other stuff that jumped out at you this week. Like there's something about Rune and Nugs. What was that about?
That's right. So this is just a little bit of a smaller story. So Rune, which is like a digital media platform, they're very big in the audiophile space where you can have your music collection and plug into several different streaming services like Tidal and Qobuz. And they just added a new one called Nugs. And what makes Nugs interesting is that they specifically focus on live music only. So I haven't had a chance to check this out, but um, there is a trial on their website and for Nug. So I was thinking about signing up for that to give it a shot. I just have to find some time and a little bit of time over the weekend to where I can actually sit down, listen, and explore. Because I am a Rune user, I have a Rune account. I used, fair warning, I used to work for the company for about a year and a half. So I'm very familiar with it, and I am a fan. Very much my bias showing, but this is a good integration. I think it just live music with the audiophile audience is something that I think was a smart move on the company's part.
I'm still I'm I'm still intimidated as techie as I am. I'm intimidated by things like Rune and Plex, and I don't know. I have to maybe this the show will motivate me to get over that intimidation. Nugs. It's funny when I first saw Nugs, I thought it was Snugs. There's a custom IEM maker called Snugs that it's very different, but that happens a lot in tech where it's like names sound very similar, but they're very different. Speaking of things that sound similar but different, Clear Audio apparently partnered with a new ambassador. I'm familiar with Clear Audio, big fan of theirs, but I wasn't familiar with the ambassador. What was that about?
So Lang Lang is a professional piano player, and he does concerts all over the world. So this is just Clear coming out of the gate and saying, "Hey, look, we're partnering with real musicians. We're doing real things with our headphones, and it's just a good brand opportunity for them to show off their involvement inside of the music space, because that's what most of these audio companies are just trying to do, is to say, hey, look at our speakers, look at our headphones, look at our audio gear, because we are so tied closely to the musicians that we're the ones you guys should be looking at. But this looks like a good partnership. I think it's always fun to watch what companies partner with what different ambassadors, because it really shows what they're focused on. And it looks like with this one, it's more classical music and that audiophile crowd.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that
have you
seems
had?
like a good match because Clear is um it's sophisticated. It's not just your it's sort of like it's good for every day. Like I recommend Clear the noise canceling headphones probably more than I would say Bose and Sony, just because like you're getting similar quality and noise canceling and all that for less money. But they also have hook style earbuds that are great for active. So it's interesting. They have kind of a few brand identities, I would say, in terms of being good quality, but also I think the sophistication factor is a good one. So it seems like a good partnership. Um, so shifting gears, I know LG had just released, I guess it was some pricing on their OLEDs for this year.
They did. This is actually a much bigger story that we'll probably need to dive in later with, but really, LG had a press event this past week, or last week, I should say, and they showed off the new TVs, the G6, C6, C6H, a bunch of micro LED TVs. So there's a lot of people out there talking about them. If you want to check out Calibrated, he's got a bunch of videos up from the press event. But the real headline here is that the prices from 2025 to 2025 and 2026 did not change. That is huge. It's huge because everyone was expecting prices to really jump this year. All the conversations last year around tariffs and what's going to happen with electronics and what's going to happen with the 2026 TV pricing and electronic pricing as a whole. But LG just came out of the gate and said, nope, we're keeping the same pricing and we're giving you better TVs. When we have Caleb on in a couple of weeks here, I definitely want to dive back into this topic because that C6H looks like it's about to be a killer TV that people are going to want for this year, and they should absolutely be demoing. So I want to have a deeper conversation around that because we expected the G6 and C6, and they're really going to be really great TVs. They have the new Radiant technology for the panels, but the C6H caught everybody by surprise. So I want to definitely dive deeper into that.
Yeah, Caleb would be great. I know he made it out to the LG stuff. I didn't make it to LG. I did get to Samsung, which was very
Shh,
interesting.
shh, I don't think we're allowed to
Yeah,
talk
no,
about that
there's so
yet.
much I can. There's a long list of things I can't say. What I can tell you is that I went there, I saw their stuff, and I had breakfast and lunch at the cafeteria, and that's about all I can say. So there's all sorts of NDAs and embargoes on what I can say about that. I think the thing with LG and the pricing is interesting because pricing is such a force in consumer electronics. We have these expectations that are built in, like, last year's model should go down, and this year's model or things for early adopters are always going to be high. But it's an interesting thing that it's such a positive thing that the prices didn't go up as opposed to that they fell. But that's the world we're in right now.
And that just means that once, Thanksgiving comes around and Black Friday and all the holiday shopping, might see some really good deals around these products. So I'm interested to see what they do in the fall time when it's sales season.
Yeah. So there were some interesting deal related pieces of news. I guess sticking in the TV sector, Panasonic was partnering with a
Yeah.
company called Skyworth, which I don't know if people in the US are as familiar with Skyworth, but they're actually an established company. And I tested out last year. They have this great 24-inch. I guess it's a monitor as opposed to a TV. I don't know. There's not a tuner in it. So it's a portable wireless 24-inch monitor. And so it's like having a 24-inch monitor you can just carry anywhere that has like streaming and stuff built into it. But they also do like outdoor TVs and other stuff. So why is it important that Panasonic is partnering with Skyworth?
I just think Panasonic's getting out of the TV space again. I mean, this to me was sad because they were gone for a while. I mean, if you take the history of it, right? Everybody remembers Plasma.
Yep.
Panasonic Plasma TVs were the creme de la creme. Everybody wanted one. I had a VT60 for a very long time, which I absolutely loved. I still kind of regret selling that one a little bit when I was jumping into newer TVs that had HDR. Should have thrown that up in a bedroom somewhere. But then they kind of fell off after the Plasma's TV started going away. Now they've come back and they built some of the best TVs around. You know, last year's OLED, the Z95B, was the best OLED of 2025. What they do from a color standpoint, what they do in their filmmaker mode, motion, everything about what they're doing is phenomenal. But I don't think the company sees it as a real moneymaker for them. So they're just moving their business over, giving it to Skyward. Skyward's going to take over large portions of their sales, distribution, marketing. They're going to have some impact on their product development as well. What I really hope this does is, like, I think if Panasonic actually niches down and says, this is our bread and butter, we're just going to focus on these OLED TVs. We're going to put out maybe 2, 3 models a year, and they're just going to put out the best TVs on the market. I think that's a winning strategy, right? But when you think about Panasonic as a much larger corporation, you know, the TV sale division, especially with the margins in TV sales, is probably not interesting to them anymore, especially when they're making money hand over fist on data center. So why would Panasonic want to invest in TVs? But hopefully what this does and the Skyworth partnership does is it keeps the TV brand alive. It keeps them pushing the envelope because more competition inside the industry is better. And hopefully it keeps pushing Sony and Samsung to do different things with their TV technologies. And, you know, LG is already pushing the envelope this year on their OLED. So hopefully that's pushing all the other companies to innovate even more. So really, right now we're in a wait and see period for them, but I really hope Panasonic TVs don't go away because I think they're such an important voice in this industry.
Yeah, Panasonic is one of those interesting companies. I mean, they always had such a huge presence at the Consumer Electronics Show. So, for those who haven't been to the show, it's at the convention center and it's at the Venetian and it's all over. But when you walk into the convention center, into the central hall, in the olden days, you literally had to walk right into the Panasonic booth, and they had all sorts of different things. I remember the massage chairs. I remember lots of TVs. They were also big in cameras back when people had handheld
Yeah.
cameras. Um, and then I heard one time that there was some, don't quote me, but essentially like almost every battery out there is Panasonic. It just gets rebranded, like all the batteries that are in other devices. So there
Okay.
are a lot of these companies. And so what that means to me is like Panasonic is spread very thin. You know, they have a lot of stuff in the massage chairs and health industry and whatever. And somehow like Samsung does it and LG does it, but it's not for everybody. So I guess it makes sense for them to focus where the business makes sense for them. There was another deal related thing with Netflix, the whole
Oh yeah.
Netflix and Warner Brothers thing.
Let's pull that
So
one up.
I know you had some opinions about that. Like, what are your thoughts? Are
So
you are you
I
happy or are you disappointed?
no, I'm really disappointed. Okay,
Why?
so you know everyone talks about the consolidation, and I get it, right? There's a lot of consolidation happening. I don't think anybody wants consolidation, but if Warner Brothers is hell bent on selling the business, and Warner Brothers Discovery wants to get out of it, then the question becomes is who should be the owners? And there could be a lot of companies out there, but I thought Netflix would be a really good one because they're pretty much already in every device. They do some really interesting things on their streaming technology, right? They've come out with the AV1 tech stack. They're developing more HDR10 content, excuse me, HDR10 plus content, and they're working really, really hard to solidify some of the streaming aspects of their business. Whereas Paramount, they they're not good. Their streaming is not good. Their infrastructure is not good, right? Their servers go down even more than Netflix's. I know everyone jokes about Netflix servers going down, but Paramount does that as well, and even to a much larger scale. So if someone was going to buy it, I would rather have Netflix buy it over Paramount and Paramount Skydance, and I just think that level of consolidation on the Paramount side is much more scary to me than the Netflix one. But they walked away with so much money. Panasonic, or excuse me, Paramount has to pay Netflix a couple $1 billion because they walked away from the account. So they're a couple $1 billion richer right now. That the CEOs, I'm sure, very happy about. But they may come back. Let's see. I'm already hearing rumors and news articles that are coming out that Paramount doesn't have the money. Not only did they overpay for Warner Brothers, they actually don't have the money to close the deal. So here comes Netflix again with their deal, and they may even bring the price down to save money and get into Warner Brothers even cheaper than they initially offered. Do you have a thought one way or the other on this, Scott?
Not not as strong as you. It just sort of it smacked to me of like if my son, who's a third grader, went into an auction and held up a paddle and said, "I'll buy it for $1 million." It's like, okay, thanks for the bid. And how does this make sense? Like it didn't really make sense to me.
I just think it's a lot of consolidation. They've had Warner Brothers has had a lot of missteps, even in their pricing. Here, I'll scroll down a little bit further in the article I wrote here. But even when you're looking at kind of the pricing and structure and where people are going and what they have from an IP perspective, I mean, you've got Netflix, which does a lot of its own IP. Disney got Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, right? Amazon's now doing all the Lord of the Rings. They bought all the James Bond franchises. So when you're looking at these companies and their infrastructures and what they're charging for, Netflix just seemed like the best to me personally. Um, and they're already charging, $16 a month for their their services on average. And then they're
If
making
they're
you
lucky,
pay,
yeah.
yeah, and then they're going to make you pay more for more devices and then 4K HDR. But every time I've streamed from the WB app, anything in HDR, Dolby Vision, what Dolby Atmos or whatever is available, I just don't think they've done a very good job in their codecs there and the way that they've set everything up. I think Netflix is probably one of the better ones from the streaming companies.
So for consumers, does this seem just more confusing or disappointing?
I don't think they really care. I think most consumers are like, "Hey, is my Netflix bill going to go up?" And as long as that bill keeps going up without any added value, I think that's where people start to get upset.
Yeah.
I think this was their chance to say, "Hey, the reason it's going up is because we just acquired WB to give you all this content, all this back catalog, and amazing IP that Warner Brothers owns." So who knows? And then one of the things that we don't talk about too much here, or people have spoken about in a lot of the articles I've seen, is the video game aspect. Warner Brothers has a whole video game arm that does very,
Mm,
very well, and Netflix has been trying to get into the video game space more
yeah.
and more. So this might have helped them elevate that. You got the Batman Arkham games from WB is one of the best games of all time, and you'll see it on a lot of people's top 10 and top 5 lists. So pulling things like that into the Netflix ecosphere would make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should definitely, as you're saying this, I'm writing down ideas for future episodes, which we're always doing. But like for cord cutters, essentially, what does this mean? And how do we compare the streaming services? Like, I'd love to have something, and maybe when Caleb's on, or we have another person, we can really have a round table about like what's the branding behind like Apple TV versus Netflix versus Disney, and really get into the weeds on that.
Yeah, I think this requires a much larger and deeper conversation. You're absolutely right.
Yep. So speaking of larger and deeper, where am I going with that? I don't know. Let's talk about Apple's new monitors. They came
Yeah,
out with some big fancy monitors, is what I was thinking.
they did. I don't really have an opinion here. Full disclosure, I do have a friend who works in the display department over at Apple, so I'm a little bit biased because I always want to see him be really successful. But to me, when these came out and they got announced, I'm like, okay, fine, okay, right? They're finally hitting some market specs that you would expect, especially at that price point. But I would still look at one of the more established monitors out there, unless you absolutely need to have Apple and you want that Apple logo and you're so deep into the Apple ecosystem that you want this monitor. But I mean, just take a look at one of the monitors from like Samsung or LG or Acer, right? Like all these guys have really great monitors out there. They're doing much better and I think more interesting things than what Apple has done here. Um, have you spent any time looking at these monitors at all?
I really haven't, and where it's going to come out eventually. I'm not an Apple fanboy. I'm not a hater. I just happen to not be in that. I used a MacBook Air for a while, and while I did, I felt a responsibility to dress nicer and just be cooler and hipper and all that. Maybe go to coffee shops, even though I don't drink coffee. Um, but eventually, I actually misplaced the MacBook Air actually on a flight for a press trip, and after that, I was so upset. I was like, I'm not going to get another Apple. It's like losing a laptop. If it's a Windows laptop, I was like, oh, that's frustrating, but I'll get another one. The Apple one, I was like, ah, darn it, I really like that one. So I try to stay up on what's going on in the world of Apple. I'm not going to just ignore them because obviously they're a huge force, but um, I haven't spent a lot of time in front of an actual Apple monitor, these big XDR jobs and all that.
Yeah, I might make a trip down to the Apple store to see if they have them on display and just take a look in person. I expect them to be good, right? I expect them to have all the right things that you need to have. But I'm looking at these prices, right? Like $1,600 for the studio display and $3,300 for the studio display XDR. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking someone can get for over $3,000, you can get a really killer ultra wide monitor for that much money and it outperform Apple.
Yeah. I mean, for that much money, I shouldn't even be able to pick it up. It should be like 43 inches and curved and amazing. Um,
Exactly.
there's a lot of cool stuff. I know LG had this one last year at CES that was a curving monitor, meaning it could be flat or you can actually adjust the curvature of it. And so I would get
Oh,
something like that, which seems pretty cool. But um, I'm also not, I'm not a huge monitor person. I tend to work off of my laptop, but it's because I've been so mobile over the last year. But I do want to sort of get like more hunkered down and get a good monitor set up. So it's good to it's good to monitor what's going on in the world of monitors, I guess. So there was
yeah.
one another item that I wanted to bring up: the smart TV tracking.
Oh yeah.
This this one is this is a bit of a spicy topic. So let's get into it because it's not the kind of thing that we like to hear about, but it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening, or I should say, it's been happening, right? This is not new, and there's lawsuits out because of all the TV tracking. But I wanted to stick this article in here, and we'll probably do a deeper dive on this later. But I think it's important for people to really understand that privacy policy and those terms and conditions that everybody skips over and just says, I agree, I agree, I agree. There's a lot in the fine print there. So, um,
So what
when
did we
you're,
miss while we were scrolling here?
yes. Yeah. So, the main thing here is when you're thinking about the smart TV tracking, we really want to focus on everything you're watching, everything you're doing, every command that you put into the TV, the companies are tracking, right? And they're using it for two purposes, really. They're using it to make their products better, and then they're sharing it with third parties. Now, that third parties could be for sales purposes, where they're sharing it, to sell your data to make money, or they're sharing it with, Netflix to make the Netflix app better on the TV. So it's happening. I guess it depends on how people feel about it. It's very easy to turn off. You just don't connect your TV to the internet, which is what I don't do anyways. Right, my TV is not connected to the internet at all. I did it initially because I have a Samsung TV in here that's a loaner from Samsung, and in order to do their calibration, you need to sign up for the Samsung account and go through that process. So that was the only time I connected it to the internet. But other than that, I disconnected it immediately, and I only use my external Apple TV, which is my streaming device. So it happens. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people make it out to be, but I do appreciate that people are always looking at this because we need to keep these companies honest and really understand what they're doing. But it's in everything, man. I mean, you have your phone, we're on our computers, we're using, we're streaming live. Like all these companies are tracking everything we do. If you're in a digital world, you just have to assume you're being tracked.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that's being tracked. Like, I don't pump gas without like looking around and like trying to hide what's going on there. Um, the my kids know that when I log into my account on Disney Plus or really even on Netflix, that there's going to be like I have a password to get in there because otherwise they could just sort of get into my profile and see stuff like Squid Game or something I don't necessarily want them to be watching. So they know that as soon as they hear the dun dun like come up, they like turn away and they know like daddy's going to enter in his password now. So just to take a quick step back, how would you summarize this article? Like, what was the article saying about who's doing this and how this came about? Was there a specific event that
Yeah.
happened, or like how did this? Why is this, since it's been happening for a while? Why is it all of a sudden a news story?
It's just a news story because more lawsuits are being filed. Oh, I just realized my tab starts sharing there. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, it's been happening. It's been happening for a long time. Big lawsuits are happening down in Texas with Samsung, Sony, LG, Hisense. All these companies are doing it, and I just don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. But I
Yeah.
think we want to make sure that people are informed about what's happening so when they're buying their TVs, they know what to do and how to avoid it. TVs are super expensive to make. There's so
Yeah.
much technology in there. Like these companies are trying to figure out every which way they can to monetize it. But if you're trying to get, you know, an OLED TV for, I put it here in the article, like a 65-inch OLED TV for under $1,500, there has to be trade-offs, right? The company's got to make money some way. And Hisense and TCL had really big Costco deals on their large 97, 98-inch and 100-inch TVs over the holidays that were like ridiculously cheap at like $2,000 and $2,500. If you
Yeah.
want that to be in the market, you have to understand these companies have to do something to offset the cost and make money so that they can continue to innovate and make TVs.
Yeah, and consumers tend to want things both ways. It's like uh, I want cheap flights with good space, and I want to be able to like go across the country for under $300. And like, how does an airline do that? Or how does a TV manufacturer make something that's huge with advanced technology that hits the price point that you think it's supposed to be. I was trying to think. This reminded me of, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, so maybe we can Google this while we're doing this. There was a webcam that came out. That was not a webcam, but it was like a camera that was meant for the TV, and it was
I remember that.
to track like how many people were in the room. Do you remember that? This is a story from like a couple of years ago. Um,
I do remember. I remember that there was a lot of pushback in that because some of these TVs were having Skype built in. I don't know if you
oh,
remember
right.
those days. Remember they were having Skype built in. They were trying to do all this stuff to make the TV the center of the living room, and I just think that pushback was dangerous. Let me see if I can
Yeah,
find it.
there was one. This was about 10 years ago. I remember because we were living in Connecticut, and there was something called biscotti. And I remember because there was a little webcam that was shaped like the biscotti, like a pastry, and it was something you put on your TV. And it was one of those things where, like, if we have this, then we can be on like the whole couch, the whole family, because at that point there were four of us, and it's a way of like doing a video call with the whole family. And so we would have things like where the kids would open up presents from the grandparents or whatever, and we could just like turn on the TV and then they can see the whole living room. We don't have to crowd around some tiny little screen or anything like that. And it was great, but for various reasons, it didn't work out. It was like another platform for people to get on. But that was, there are a lot of these devices that in that time, in that point in tech history, like it made sense to do it then. And, um, since then there have been all sorts of like tablets and things that have been made for grandparents so that they can, because essentially grandparents want to be able to video chat with their family and play games with the kids and things like that. So it's interesting, but it's, this privacy stuff, people need to pay more attention to it. You can't just
Yeah, and
click through everything. When you get a new phone, you can't just click yes, 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 yes. Yes, I want to improve your phone. Yes, I want to send diagnostics. Like maybe you don't.
I think that's where it gets a little tricky. It's as an adult, it's fine, but when I started thinking about for kids and my kids who are on watching something on Disney Plus or what have you, it's like, okay, I know you guys are tracking these kids' accounts because we set up all the privacy rules around there, right, on what content they can and can't see. That's
Yeah.
where I get a little bit more trepidatious on how these companies are tracking and what they're doing on the kids side. I mean, my wife and I made a policy as soon as our first daughter was born that we're really not going to post them a lot on social media, and we don't post our kids on social media really at all at this point. And it's very rare that they're up there. But at the same time, it's like you can't stop it all, and you just do trade offs that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like every time we sign up for a new school or daycare or camp or something, there's always a little checkbox that says like, I authorize them to put photos on the Facebook page or something. And
Yeah,
there have been chances for me to where, what was I writing about? I think I was writing about like a smartwatch for kids that was a phone also, and I could have put their faces, but I don't even want to like do that, like put them in articles and things like that. So um like you said, it's that sums it up for me. It's like you can't be perfectly. That's why I always laugh at these, like Mission Impossible or something like that, where somebody says like, well, I mean, it's like he doesn't exist, it's like he scrubbed all his identity off the internet. It's like, that's fun, but it's very difficult to do. And there's, as far as I know, there's no such thing as being able to actually do that. Like your stuff is
yeah.
out there in ways that you don't even know about. There are entire sites and apps dedicated to helping you find where all your stuff is and try to prevent it. But it's you can be a little bit preventive, but you can't do all of it.
Yeah, and with the TV, the basis for this article, I mean, people spend so much time on there and the content that they're watching. So it's just one of those things that are going to happen, unless people are willing to pay more on their TVs. Or better yet, just don't connect your TV to the internet. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people like to use the internal apps or OS, but you kind of pick your poison. Do you want to spend $35 on a Fire Stick or a Roku stick, plug it into the side of the TV? Well, guess what? Now Amazon and Roku is going to track you. So as long as you want to be in that ecosystem, you kind of just pick the master you want to serve, almost, right?
Yeah.
So before we jump into this big topic here, Scott,
Yeah.
because I definitely want to get your thoughts on this. We've been holding off this conversation. I just want to tell everyone, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, jump in the comments. We are watching them. We're happy to answer anything that's coming through. So don't forget to like this video and put your comments and questions below. Now, the big story, the one that we actually changed our schedule around for, is Drop is shutting down. Um, for those of Scott, before we jump into this, for those people who don't know, who haven't heard of Drop, can you give a little bit background on the company before we get into? And guess what? They're shutting down.
Yep. So Drop, they used to be called Mass Drop, and what Drop is what it is currently for the next couple of weeks is it's a place that they collaborate with manufacturers to make different versions of products. And so, like I mentioned, Meze, they had a version of their 99s called the Noir. And they have a lot of different products that are like accessories and gaming and keyboards and stuff like that, microphones, speakers, so a lot of helpful stuff. And they collaborate with people, and so it'll be like the Drop X, the Drop and whatever product. And so they oftentimes have interesting design changes, and they're pretty popular, but like they're apparently closing. They were bought by a company called Corsair, which also makes those kinds of things like the PC components and gaming PCs and keyboards and stuff like that. So it makes sense, but I'm not sure what exactly is going to happen. The news that you can look on the Drop site, and we'll include a link. The news is that as of the end of this month, they're going to close their online store.
Yeah, I pulled from the article here. So here's basically the summary from their press release. Key dates: March 25th is the last day to place an order. March 31st, they're officially done. All current orders are going to be shipping. Any rewards that you have must be used by March 25th. And then they'll continue to support it from a customer service standpoint from Corsair. And products, you can still buy some of their products. This is where I was a little bit unclear on what products will be available going forward, but they're saying they'll be available on Corsair.com, Amazon, and Best Buy. And one of the reasons this is such a big story, and actually funny enough, it will lead us into your experiences at CanJam. But as I noted here, and at headphones.com also made this comment as well. So it's not a original thought. I mean, this is an industry wide thing, but the Sennheiser's HD6XX were one of the biggest recommended headphones for anyone coming into the head-fi space or audiophile space. And now it looks like they're going away. Now, Scott, you reviewed these when they first came out, right, Scott?
Not when they first came out. They were already very well established, but I did review them. I actually reviewed them for Gear Junkie, and I reviewed them for Business Insider. And these are like, if you know anybody who loves music, could be also a producer, somebody who mixes audio for video, chances are pretty good, like better than not, that they will have a pair of these Sennheiser 6XX. And so they're referred, in short, they're just referred to as the 6XX, but it's essentially the Drop and Sennheiser collaboration of 6XX. So this is why this is a big deal. Basically, Sennheiser came out with this Their whole 600 line, the HD 600, are very well revered. And one of the best revered headphones in that line are the HD 650. And
Yes.
Drop worked with Sennheiser to create the 6XX. And in doing so, they basically took the 650. This is a headphone that retails for over $500.
Yeah.
They took the 650 and they shortened the cord. They changed the end of the cord, the termination, from 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter, because more people have that, so it makes it a little bit more accessible. And they did some other stuff with the branding and other surface things. And then they started selling it. Drop started selling it for like $200. So they took a great product
Wow.
that everybody loved, made it better, and then sold it for way less. So if you asked any audiophile or any reviewer like me, like, I'm just starting to get into audiophile stuff, like what's a good value? I don't want to spend very much. The 6XX is like before you even finish the sentence, like it's that popular. And so if people aren't able to buy this now, because Drop was the only place where you could buy it, like a lot of my articles will have affiliate links to Amazon and other places, Best Buy. Drop was really the only place that it could be bought, other than if you're going to like buy a used version on eBay or something like that. So the fact that the 6XX, I don't know if it won't be available on Corsair, but it's not clear what products will and won't be available. So why it's such a big deal. To give you an idea of how much of a big deal it is. So like you said, March 25th is like the last day that you can actually put in a request to buy something on Drop. Right now, you can't even buy it on Drop because there's a line. There's a queue of over 100,000 people. There's something like 116,000 people have said, I would like to purchase this. So it's super back ordered. so basically right now you can't get it unless they do some amazing thing where they make a whole ton of them. So there are that many people. That's why we're focusing on this in the news.
Well, then let me
It's a
ask you
big deal.
something. Yeah, let me ask you something on that then. You're at CanJam. I think you saw Sennheiser, right? You talked to them. Did they
Yep.
know this was coming?
I didn't hear about it from Sennheiser because it's a collaboration, right? So it's essentially it's Drop's product, but it's based on
Yeah.
a collaboration that they did with Sennheiser. So Sennheiser isn't. If you go to the Sennheiser booth, you're not going to find these. It's in other years, Drop had their own table at CanJam, and like I said, they had different speakers and things like that. So I heard about it at CanJam. Somebody said like, "Oh, did you hear the news about Drop?" I was like, "No, what's going on?" And they told me, and the very first thought that I had was, "Oh gosh, what happens to the 6XX? Like they can't get rid of that, right?" It just it's so I guess to people not in the headphone world, you might be wondering like, why is this so alarming, or what's the big deal? But it's a huge deal. I'm trying to think of what an analogy would be. Uh, it'd be like saying, Costco just got rid of their hot dogs. Really? Like that's why people go to Costco to get the hot dog deal. That might not be the best analogy, but
No,
it's
it makes sense, right? Like, I haven't heard these myself, but I see them recommended. Like, you go on Reddit, you go on AVS forums, you go anywhere, and someone's like, "Hey, I'm just getting into this industry. Like, what should I listen to?" You're absolutely right. This was requested. I see the request here. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but right now they're at 116,000 people have
yeah.
requested this. So, I mean,
We could get into the
who knows?
sound a little bit. I mean, basically the sound, it just sounds smooth. The whole thing sounds super smooth. The two biggest characteristics for me are that, or three biggest. One is that they're very smooth, like throughout the frequencies. The second one is that the mids, like where vocals and guitars and trumpets and pianos, those kinds of things live,
Okay.
is it's pushed forward in a way that I just don't hear it in other headphones. They're not the only mid-forward headphones out there, but the way they do it, again, because it's smooth, is they just sound like if you put and I have a bunch of Sennheiser headphones. If you put the 6XX on me, I guarantee without touching them, looking at them, I could tell that this is what I'm listening to. The other thing is that for people who are used to what's a fun headphone, like the, I don't know, the Meze 105s, 109, any of the Meze stuff, those tend to be more V-shaped. And so higher treble and higher bass. If you're used to that, then it might seem like the bass is missing. It rolls off. And so in the audiophile world, when you say it rolls off, it means like it's not as present in the sub bass. But
Okay.
if you're listening to something that just sounds, so it sounds a little bit more neutral, but smooth and with forward mids. And so again, for people who are mixing audio and they don't want it colored or muddied or anything, these are just so they're not the most clean and clear, but they're just as smooth is the word that I keep repeating because
Okay.
they just handle everything nicely. Like there's certain things that I know to listen for in my test tracks where on other headphones it sounds harsh or sibilant, and on these it doesn't. It sounds nice. So that's why for $200 to have something that's so, I would call these reference headphones. I
So
mean, they're
then
really,
what do you recommend now? I mean, what's the alternative out there? I have a couple that I have from based off of CE critic scores and data, but what would
yeah.
you
Well,
recommend?
I'd be interested to hear, so that you're gonna like put me to the test now, see if I match up with the CE critic score. Um, I think it's a mistake to try to replace them because you can't replace them. It's like a classic car. Like there's not going to be another this. So what you can do is try to replace what they represent. So do you want to represent their value? For $200, like um, the Hi-Fi Man Sundara just came down, and that tends to be around the $200 amount. I know FIO, for people who haven't heard of them, FIIO. FIO has some headphones like the FT1s that are they're good. It's not going to be the same sound. It isn't. Even um, honestly, even Sennheiser can't perfectly replicate the sound. So you have to choose like what are you going to go for? If you go for the price, then the Hi-Fi Man or the FIO are good. If you're going for the sound, then you could just get the HD 650s, but it's going to have a 1/4 inch jack. It's going to have a longer cord, and instead of spending around $200, you'll spend like $300 or $400. I think they're closer to 400 on Sennheiser's site, but I saw them recently for like 320 or so on Amazon, which is, again, it's a great value for a headphone that was $500, but it's kind of the FOMO thing, right? Like if you knew that you could get these for 200,
Of
you'd get them for
course.
200.
Yeah, of course.
But you
Well,
know,
actually,
the HD 600 are another good one, but you have to choose. Do you want the price or do you want the sound?
so we're lining up pretty good over here. Hopefully, let me shoot it this way. So
Oh,
and the data, right? The number one were the HD 660s S2,
yeah,
right? And mostly, if the price drops, like you're saying, you can get it for 300, 350, potentially used as well.
yeah.
Then, like you said, Hi-Fi Man, and my data showed a little bit of preference towards the Focals. I don't know if you tried the Bats or the Haydens.
The Batiste I've spent some time with, but it's a very different headphone. The Batiste are Bluetooth, and um, they have a built-in DAC, so they can be used in USB-C mode. And they're just like a few times as expensive. It's a very different headphone. I don't even know how to pronounce the other one. I think Hadenis. I tried that last year at CanJam, and I really did like it. But again, that's a Bluetooth headphone. The 6XX, in case we didn't make it very clear in the beginning, it's a wired passive headphone. So it's open. You can't. It's not noise canceling. It's the opposite. It's open ear headphones, meaning that you hear what's going on around you in the room. And so that's another thing that, like, I don't look at that as a bad thing, but it means that when I listen, I want to listen in a place that's quiet. I wouldn't listen to them on the subway or somewhere where it's crowded. So I think that's, and the 660S2, it's good. I have it, and it's not the one I reach for all the time. It's not my favorite. I love Sennheiser, but it's not, I wasn't crazy about that one. But
And what do you think about
it is very popular. A lot of people like the 660.
And what about the Hi-Fi Man?
I don't have it, but I've heard it, and it's another one that the Sundara is another one that's similar to the 6XX in the sense that it's just an easy recommendation, and it just came down in price over the last year. It was now I forget. I'm gonna see. This is why, just to plug the site, this is why you need CE Critic, because I don't remember all the prices and know what it was. It was something like $400, and it came down closer to $200. So it's a similar situation in that it's an incredible value. So if you
Amazon
said,
has
like,
it for $180 right now.
yeah, that's ridiculous. Like, it would be a pretty good value at twice that price.
Even though it came out in 2020?
Yeah. That one, or Hi-Fi Man also has the Edition XS is another one that that would be another pretty easy recommendation. I mean, it's a little polarizing because of the treble. Treble is a tricky one because some people like that amount of detail and some people don't. Some people really just want something that's like not as sharp or well defined, but I like the XS. It just has a nice, it's V-shaped and it's detailed, and that's a good one. So on my short list would be the Sundara, the XS, and I'm not as familiar with Theo. I've tried them. I've tried the FT1 and the FT7.
Okay.
I didn't listen to them at the show this year, but those are some of the easy recommendations. It's all about what's important to you. But make sure before you buy something, like in the world of headphones, you need to know if you're getting like a powered headphone or something that needs to be plugged in, and whether it's open back or closed back, because it's very different.
I think this is the perfect transition. You set it up so nicely here, Scott. So
Speaking of
let's
transitions,
let's talk into CanJam here.
Yep.
For those people who don't know, what is CanJam and what happened over the weekend?
So CanJam is named look more like cans. There were some, I forget who it was, but there were some that I put on, and it's like I can't think of anything other than Princess Leia. They have that sort of like big knobby black thing going on the side of my head. So CanJam is basically a 2-day show that focuses on headphones. And there are a few things that make this a very interesting show. Number one is it's open to the public. You can actually go. They have shows all over the world. I think the next ones are in Hong Kong and Singapore. The next one in the US, I believe, is in Southern California in Orange County at the end of August. But you can buy tickets. It's usually like something like $35 to go for one of the days or $50 to go for both days. And you can go and listen to essentially the best headphones in the world, some of the best, and certainly some that would be way out of most people's price range. Like 99.99% of people, they're out of their price range. But by doing that, you get to hear things. So what I like about it as a reviewer is that I can go and hear things that I wouldn't, from brands I wouldn't normally have known about, and to hear things that I wouldn't normally have heard, and really educate myself on things like, why do I care if I have a balanced or an unbalanced signal, or what is a good amplifier to drive these particular headphones. So it's essentially this Marriott Marquis in Times Square, and it's a big ballroom where you go in, and there are dozens of vendors from all over the world that show off IEMs, which I'm going to refer to this. It's in-ear monitors. It's like a fancy way of saying earphones,
Yeah.
but they're not. It's instead, earphones makes it sound like it's a cheap thing, like what you get on the airplane. So IEMs, headphones, they have music players, very fancy, hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars players. I go in there, and it's funny because I have, like, in the rest of the world, I'm an audio nerd. And then I go in there and I feel like there are other people who are nerding out on a different level. It's like how I like Star Wars, but there are fans who like nerd out in ways that are well beyond what I would do. So it's just a great environment to go and experiment and listen to a lot of different headphones. And I've gone several times. I think this is my fourth or fifth one.
So you've heard so many things over there. I think one of the advantages you get is you get to actually talk with a lot of the brands and a lot of the engineers and people who are building the headphones. But was there anything new there from a technology standpoint that caught your eye? I know everyone's been talking about LDACs over the last couple of years and bringing that technology into as many headphones as possible. But was there anything that felt like it was a theme there?
Well, I don't want to gloss over what you just said, because it's actually one of the big things about CanJam is that when you go there, and this I almost feel like I'm doing an ad for CanJam, and I'm not, but what I found is that when I go there, that I'm talking with real people. And so what I mean by that is, like, I went to Meze Audio, and this was back in 2020, and I said, like, oh, I like the sound of these. And the design is so cool. And he said, oh, thank you. And I looked down at his name badge and it said Antonio Meze. Like, that's the head of the company. That's the one who designed it. Or to go to Chord Electronics, this company in the UK, and talk about the Mojo, which is a very popular, like one of the most popular portable DACs out there. And I said, oh, and I asked a question, and Rob Watts was the one. It'd be like if I went to a computer show and Bill Gates was answering my questions. Like, these are the people who actually started all this, and these are the real people. And so there's a level of expertise, but there's also a big people factor in that this is such a community. I mean, it's so, like, every year I see something where, there's an amp manufacturer and they want to show off their amp, and somebody says, yeah, that's from the Meze booth. We'll talk about those. Those are the Astro that I mentioned earlier in the show. They have such an interesting presentation of, like, the box and the holder for the actual earbuds. So yeah, it's such a community that, like, an amp manufacturer might say, like, oh, I want to show off my amp. And then Audeze or somebody like that will say, oh, here, have these $5,000 headphones and you can test out your amp that way. And it's just, everybody's going around and asking each other things and networking, but it's not just a networking thing. There's a lot of love in that room. There's a lot of
Oh, that's great.
community. So to answer your question, what was the new technology? It's funny. I don't know if there's anything that, like, jumped out at me sometimes they'll have something like where they'll talk about a new format or XMEMS, these really tiny, tiny drivers. Um, there wasn't in particular something that jumped out at me that's like a thing that a lot of people would have. There's one thing that jumped out at me is that there were a couple of different sets of IEMs that have a lot of drivers. And so when we say drivers, it's like another way of saying tiny speakers. And so picture like what an earbud looks like and how many speakers do you think you can fit in there? You know, there's, as we're going by the, I think we saw the Status Audio, they have in their wireless earbuds, they have 3 drivers, right? And so you have different drivers do different things well. And so like a dynamic driver is good at doing some of the lower stuff. And for a lot of headphones and earbuds, you just have one dynamic driver, but in others, they're what's called balanced armature. And those just use a different technology to handle the mids or the highs. Or sometimes you'll have like a Knowles balanced armature doing that. It's just a particular thing that in the biz they refer to as BAs. And so if you see a description of earbuds and it says 1 DD dynamic driver, 2 BAs balanced armatures, it means that very specific drivers, like if you picture a speaker has a very specific driver to do the low stuff and then another one to do the high stuff. And then sometimes even a subwoofer or a super tweeter or something like that. So when you see something that has 2 drivers, you know that they're dedicated things doing different things. And then sometimes there are 3 drivers. I want you to guess what is the biggest number of drivers of IEMs that I heard at the show.
Oh boy. I mean, God, you gotta have small housings, right? It's actually gotta still fit in your ear in some way. So
Yeah, and they
I'm
were a
gonna,
little big for IEMs, but they look like
yeah,
IEMs. I'm not saying that they weren't huge. They didn't. I didn't look like Frankenstein or
I'm gonna
anything.
say 5.
Okay, that's a good guess. There were some that I tested that had 12,
Wow.
and the one that had the most was the Ibasso Epitome with 20.
20.
20 drivers.
Did it make a difference having so many drivers? Like, did they actually sound good, or was it just, hey, we
uh,
have 20 drivers and they're each doing a very specific frequency range?
well, the thing to be careful of and the thing that's tricky is it's tough not to be biased, right? Like if I go in knowing how much something is or knowing how many drivers there are, then there's something in my brain that says I should like these. And then it's almost like it's like when you go on a first date. Like the first thing is like, does this person repulse me? And then the next thing is, oh, I might marry this person. You know, like it's a big swing.
Okay.
So when I listen to the Ibassos, um, one of the things that's a concern when you have that many speakers is what's called crossover, which is like if you have different drivers handling different frequencies, then there has to be a communication within the earbuds that says, okay, I'm going to handle from 40 hertz to 80 hertz. I'm going to handle from this many hertz to that many hertz, and then it can get messy with too many crossovers. Having said that, I thought these the Epitome were just really smooth. I'm also not what I would call a super nerd when it comes to audio, so maybe somebody else who heard them would think the crossovers weren't good, but to me it just sounded pretty smooth. These were some of the clearest earbuds that I've heard. They were I'd say they were in my top 3 for the whole show. And it wasn't because they have more drivers. Like it just doesn't work that way. It's not that more drivers means they're better. And it's not that a higher price means that they're going to be better. But I
Yeah.
mean, we're human. So it's tough not to pay attention to that. You know, like in the law movies and shows where they say, have the jury ignore that. It's like, it's hard to ignore that. But there were some that I heard that were single drivers that were great. and there were some that were actually under $1,000 that were great. Those Astros, like I said, they're like $900. That's expensive in the world of most people. Most people aren't going to get $900
Yeah.
earbuds as their first thing. But in the world of audiophiles, it's under $1,000. It's decent. And the sound that they put out, I thought those $900 earbuds, even though I heard earbuds that were multiple $1,000s, there were a couple of other ones like the Volk Audio Etoile, I believe is how it's pronounced. I'm not French, but I think it's Etoile. Those were great and just super clear, but with like some good personality. But when I hear what I can get for $900, if I were spending my money, it's a tough one. So the world of audiophiles is fraught with, here's the best you can do, and I can actually get pretty close for less money. So there's a lot of this like, well, what is the best we can do? And that's what audiophiles are chasing. It's like the thing of being an audiophile is that like you're happy to chase what's the best I could do, even if it doesn't make perfect sense in terms of what you could get.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you, because it was in our thumbnail, right? What do these expensive HE1 Sennheiser headphones sound like? $60,000 headphones. I think one of the advantages, I don't think you got a chance to say it here, but you got to hear some of the most expensive headphones in the world back to back. Which ones were they again? And I know you mentioned the HE1 from Sennheiser.
So
what were the other two?
Yeah, the Sennheiser HE1s, those were based, originally they were called the Orpheus, and then they came out with the HE1 later. I think the Orpheus originally, and I don't know the conversion of like in today's dollars, but originally they were a mere $16,000. And then the HE1 came out and sold for, I think, 50. Now you can get them for like $60,000. This is,
that's
so
insane.
When you watch the video, and I think this will be like in the edited version, but I don't know if you can show the video of when we turned it on. Yeah, so when you turn it on, the knobs come out of this fine Italian marble chassis, and then the tubes come up, and then they light up, and then, as you just saw, the headphones themselves are revealed. So when people say like $60,000 headphones, it's not just the headphones. You're getting a whole system here. And the system is these very nice headphones that are attached to a very long cord. I almost, they had this little settee. I almost like lied down with them because I actually got like half an hour with them, which is the most I've ever had with the HE1. I've heard them a few times before, and each time it's like, wow, I forgot what things can sound like. Yeah, there's Eric turning it on. So it's this amazing experience, and it's not just about how do they sound. There have been audiophiles, I've seen videos on this, where they'll hear the HE1 and they'll literally start to cry, just like tears of joy. And it's that kind of a thing. I did not cry.
So what do they sound like? Like, is this something that you just have at a show to say you can listen to these type of headphones? Like, what do they actually sound like?
These actually speak to what I was just saying, which is that they really show off what can be done. That's how I heard it described. The HE1s they're not being made like every other headphone. They're not being made to sell them, although they do sell, and they almost always sell out. They're not being made for mass market, clearly, because of the price, but it's not even the sound. I brought some friends, my friends Rafi and Hannah, to a show once at CES, and they got to hear it, and it's like, wow, okay, that recalibrates my brain for like what's possible. Like you don't realize, it's sort of like lifting off a veil, and all of a sudden you just hear the pure music. It's more of that kind of in the room sound the sound like you're in the room with the people who are making the music. So it feels like that. It's not what I would call bassy, but it's got very clear bass that's defined. And I remember it being, it was more bassy this weekend than I remember it being. So I was listening to stuff, I was like, oh, because sometimes when you hear audiophile, one of the things about audiophile or reference headphones, if somebody says that they're neutral or they're flat, it means that you're like with the 6XX, that the bass is going to roll off and you're just not going to hear bass, which is the opposite of most consumer headphones, which very much emphasize the bass. But when they're emphasized, the bass bleeds into the mids and the highs. And so then you get this muddy kind of sound and you're not hearing the same detail. The HE1, everything is well defined, but it's very colorful. And it's difficult to hear. It's difficult to describe the sound, you know, like it's part of my job is describing how does this sound? And it's difficult to remember the sound. My audio memory, like I heard a lot of different things. I tried not to listen to too many because then it's like even taking notes, then it kind of blurs like what was I hearing. But what I remember the most is I was listening to a track called Mountains, which is on one of my testing playlists. It's by Hans Zimmer. It's from the Interstellar soundtrack.
Yeah.
And if you listen to it on headphones, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It starts off with this really like, it almost sounds like you're in a cave and you're hearing like, doop, doop, doop. It's very small and then it builds like about the 2-minute mark. It's this huge swell, like,
yeah.
And the HE1 is a headphone that could handle the fine details and the huge sounds. Whereas I've listened to it on other headphones and it doesn't sound the same. It sounds like very faint in lower headphones. And it's like, oh, it's jarring when it gets to that big swell at the 2-minute mark or so. So it's just an experience. It's a hard thing to do, but that's another, I'll put in another ad since it's, it's a free ad for them, but that's why you would go to a CanJam or something like that, where you are allowed to listen to some of the best in the world. The other ones. So there are two, if somebody said like, what are the most expensive headphones in the world? And I'm not talking about like, if somebody bejewels something, puts actual diamonds or gold or something like that. Like I'm saying, the headphone system itself is the most expensive. Sennheiser HE1, the Hi-Fi Man Shangri-La, that was also there. The Shangri-La is interesting because it kind of looks like this weird, like aircraft carrier with tubes sticking up out of it. And there's also that one, I think, is like 50,000. And there's one called the Shangri-La Junior, and they didn't have Junior at the show. Yeah, here's the Shangri-La. It's quite a, just imagine having a pizza and putting down a drink on that thing, like a $50,000 amplifier.
I'm sure you're wiping off fingerprints nonstop on that thing.
Yeah, and they're the headphones. Yeah, it's nice. It's good, but it's like, it's not particularly the sound that I like. I definitely do like the Shangri-La Junior, which is significantly less. They just didn't have it at the show this year, but I remember from last year. Not that I'm ever going to spend $7,000 to $10,000 on headphones, but why spend 50 when you can spend $7? The other one, they were actually right next door to Hi-Fi Man, the Warwick Aperio. Last year they had it in a private suite, and this year they had a pod that was down on the floor. I don't know if you're able to pull up the video, but they had this pod. And so I listened to the Warwick Aperio. That one also, I think that's more like 40,000, like maybe $38,000 if you were to buy them. There's a special edition called the Golden Sound Edition that is named after Golden Sound, who's based in the UK. He's on the headphone show, the headphones.com. Actually, that's the shirt I'm wearing is from headphones.com. And one of their creators is named Golden Sound, and he collaborated for that. So in that is the Aperio. And then the other one in that booth is called the Bravura that I also listen to. I really like that sound. I like the Golden Sound edition of the Aperio better than the regular edition of the Aperio. It just has a little bit more color, a little bit more bass, a little bit more personality. But that's another one that's very clean.
I think this
And
is the Bravura that you were
such a
listening
pleasure
to.
to listen to. It's like taking a ride in a super fancy car. Like, I'm not going to buy this car, but now I know, like, this is what a sports car feels like. That kind of a thing.
Do you remember the prices on those?
The Bravura, I
Yeah.
think that's in the $7,000 or $8,000 range. Don't quote me, but it's like that. It's something a lot less, and they're newer. They were released a lot more recently than the Aperio.
Okay.
So all of these, the HE1, the Aperio, the Shangri-La, these are like for decades. These have been staples. That's another interesting thing that's a little bit different, I would say, than the rest of the tech world. In the world of audio, it's not always that newer is better. There's a lot of respect for heritage brands and heritage products that are just, they stand the test of time, both as a product and then their performance. So
any other headphones you want to bring up?
Let's see. I brought up a few that I heard. Campfire Audio. I like. There's some that called the Clara, and those are a couple $1,000s. Those are in-ear monitors, and those sound clean, but they have a pretty distinctive like bass bump. But it's done tastefully. It's not done in a way that, like I said, it stays in its own lane in terms of the frequencies. So it's fun. And that was actually the first one I listened to. When I walked into the floor, I was like, oh, I remember liking the Clara from last year. And so I listened to sort of calibrate my ears, I listened to $2,000 IEMs. The second day that I listened,
just out of curiosity, because I wanted to ask you this earlier, but I didn't want to ruin your flow.
That's
okay. But what do they do? What do they do from a hygiene perspective? Because that, to me, like, thinking about all the people that are listening to headphones and sweat, like, what do these companies do from that point of view at the show? I'm curious.
Well, first of all, we'll start with IEMs. I either have my own tips, which if I'd known you were asking, I could have shown you like which ones I use. But I have a collection of different tips that fit different nozzle sizes, and so I'll bring the ones that I know fit my ears. And so people don't use the same tips over and over. And then for things like over-ear headphones that have ear pads, then yeah, they're cleaning them down after every use. Because otherwise, like, even as you were saying that, there's a bunch of sweaty people. I mean, we're inside, we're not necessarily sweaty, but it's still like do I really want to be touching these when that person just touched them? And
I mean, your ears can get hot listening to some headphones, right? And that's obviously what we see online. So people talk about they can't listen for too long because of the heat. So that's why I was curious.
Oh, sweaty that way, yeah. Well, I mean, for better or for worse, that's why there are a lot of open back headphones. So that's another factor. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So one of the interesting things about open backs for people who haven't heard them before is they have a very natural sound, because in the world, when you hear sounds, they sound natural. The sound is coming through the air to your ears. And so this tries to replicate that. And closed headphones, it's almost like, sometimes it feels like if you cup your hands to your ears, then it sounds that kind of muffled thing. And so closed back headphones have something to overcome when it comes to sound reproduction, because it's unnatural. It doesn't sound, so they're like closed back headphones have to try to sound natural because they're not. But the drawback to open back headphones is that here I am and I'm picking up some whatever. I was at Austrian. I really like this company called Austrian. They have some headphones called the Composer that are a few $1,000s. But like, if there's somebody next to me and this person's listening to their music really loudly, it's going to affect me because I can hear what they're playing through their
Yeah.
headphones. And so
Let me see. I think
that's one of the downsides of CanJam is that in most situations, you really have to deal with the fact that it's not an ideal listening thing. Unless like Warwick, you have a pod in there and nobody else is in the pod with you. Or like the HE1, if you're in a private suite, then it's a little different. But that having to hear other people's music come in, that happened at the Odyssey booth. I was listening to the new LCD 5S and it sounded good, but the person next to me was cranking their music. And so I didn't really get a sense of the dynamics and the character of the headphones.
I got you. Okay, before we sign off here, I mean, man, we thought we would only be here for an hour, but we're almost coming up on an hour and a half.
I didn't know how we were going to come. How are we possibly going to fill up an hour? It's not possible.
Yeah. So as a reviewer, right, you're obviously going to get a lot of stuff to review, but if you could pick one headphone from CanJam that you heard that you're like, I have to get this at home and listen to and write a review on it, which headphone would you want?
Boy, I hate those questions, and you love asking them. I hate playing favorites over on the one headphone thing. I heard some from Final that were like called the something 10,000, which in the old days like 2,000, 3,000. That sounds like pretty futuristic. Now it's 10,000. Those sounded really good, although it's like some of these headphones you need a specific amplifier, and I don't really have that here. I have some good portable ones. There's a company called iFi that had this DSD Phantom amplifier that was like a do everything. Like you look at it, it almost looks like two products. And I didn't send you a picture of this because I wasn't thinking we were going to talk about this, but the DSD Phantom, it looks like it's something stacked on each other, but it's actually one thing that takes all sorts of inputs and has all sorts of outputs, and there's so many things you could toggle. And I played with that amp for a while, and I'd love to test that amp. And then I would just need some really great headphones to play with them. The headphones that they had at the booth were called the ZMF. I think they're called the Tessadera. I'm going to say Tessadera. And so if I could play with something afterwards, that's my answer. I'd love to try out that amp, the DSD Phantom amp with the Tessadera headphones. And that setup, I'd have to look up the prices, but I'm guessing that setup would be some crazy like $6,000 or $7,000 for those two things.
That's pretty awesome. That sounds great. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing your experience with CanJam. I need to make one out go to one at some point here. The so-called one sounds fun. You get to Southern California, check out the show. I know Odyssey is out there, so I'd love to stop by.
Oh yeah, they're right
talk
down
to
there.
them and talk to Shankar and see their facilities. Hope to have them on the show here at some point. But thanks so much for sharing that experience. I hope everyone enjoyed episode 1. I know we had a lot to talk about. Headphones were the primary topic here, but this is what we're going to be doing every week. Scott and I are going to come here. We're going to talk about the news. We've got some deep dives planned for you guys. We're planning the next episode for next week. We wanted to keep this episode just me and Scott because it's our first one, and we just want to, feel things out. You probably saw a couple of hiccups here and there, so apologies for that. But man, I had such a good time talking to you, Scott. We do this anyway, so it's good to finally put a camera on and hit record and really help people out there and understand what's happening from a news perspective and what's happening out in the world of audio and AV tech and 2-channel audio.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
really,
I'm
really
not always
appreciate it.
going to events like this. It just so happened that right around when we're gonna do our first episode that I went to this really cool headphone show, and we're not always gonna be talking about headphones. Sometimes we'll talk more about TVs and speakers and sound bars, maybe even some home automation stuff, but it's gonna be the kind of stuff that where we're thinking like, "Oh, like, we were thinking about this during a review or during a when we're just talking on the phone, or we saw this video online. Let's dive deeper and really try to help people understand the technology and how it affects home entertainment and everything they're doing in that space."
And really, really looking forward to it. We're going to try coming to you every week live. So make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, share this video. We super appreciate you guys being here. Scott, what are you working on next? I know you got a couple of pretty big articles in the pipeline, but what are you working on next?
Actually, I'm working on something for Business Insider, a piece about bookshelf speakers, and so that's been a rabbit hole that I've just uh, gotten into. That it's like, what's a bookshelf speaker, and then what are the prices, and what are the different kinds. So that's been an interesting one. So I'm going to be testing out a whole bunch of bookshelf speakers for watching movies and listening to music, and um, that's probably the biggest one. It takes a while. Like, I'm not expecting that article to come out until May, but I'm already like researching and then getting the products, and then it's a whole process.
No, that's awesome. So stay tuned. I think we have some conversations planned around that for
Oh, yeah.
the Tech Collective. But again, I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks for joining us on our first show. Scott, thanks so much for being here. And
Thanks
we
for
will
having
catch you guys in the next one. Thank you, everybody.